Hi everybody, quick reminder, don't forget to check out the on-screen end cards towards the end of the video, as well as the merch shelf and links down in the description below to explore my new Outcast comic book series. And I just have to say that I genuinely appreciate all of the support that's been shown for this new adventure. Now I hope you're having a great day, and let's dive in to Rao. He made his very first appearance in the Prime Earth universe in Justice League of America Volume 4, Issue number 1, that was released in August of 2015. This latest iteration of Rao is actually a Kryptonian religious leader from long ago who became a god, or at least that's what he billed himself as. And this powerful, nigh-immortal being seems slightly taller than Superman and having about his same build, yet he has blue eyes and long white hair, and is typically seen with a reddish or white aura around his head or his entire body. Now, Rao was reimagined not as a mythological abstraction, but as a terrifying physical antagonist. While he is worshipped as the supreme deity of Krypton by some of his followers, this version of Rao was revealed to be an actual Kryptonian man who ascended to power roughly 250,000 years ago. His divinity was manufactured through the discovery and usage of the Stones of Life. These extremely advanced, semi-sentient crystals granted him the ability to drain life energy from others to sustain his own existence. By siphoning the years from his followers, he achieved biological immortality and nearly unimaginable powers, establishing himself as the Great Rao and shaping Kryptonian society into a theocracy dedicated to feeding his eternal hunger. And he and his prophets spread this so-called religion throughout the universe, planet by planet. Now, his physiological capabilities were terrifying. As I mentioned earlier, he possessed life force absorption, allowing him to drain the vitality from other living beings to sustain his own immortality. Now, to go hand in hand with that, he also mastered biological manipulation, which allowed him to alter the DNA of others to cure diseases of the body, the mind, and emotional affliction. Although this was primarily a tool to just pacify his victims for consumption. Furthermore, he exhibited a vast superhuman physiology that rivaled the most powerful beings in the universe, boasting vast superhuman strength, durability, speed, agility, and flight that allowed him to easily combat powerhouses like Wonder Woman and Aquaman simultaneously. Not to mention that it was noted that he was vastly more powerful than Superman, primarily due to the fact that he had already absorbed billions of people's life force over hundreds of thousands of years. Now, we first see Rao arrive on Earth projecting an aura of absolute benevolence. To Superman, this was the miraculous return of his culture's ultimate authority and supreme deity. Rao immediately seduced the world with miracles, utilizing his abilities and his cathedral to distribute free energy and cure incurable diseases across the globe. His seduction was also aided by initially having Superman be his mouthpiece, speaking out on behalf of Rao. However, all of these kind acts and healings were a trap, because by altering the biology of human beings, Rao was grafting part of his genetic material onto them, turning the population into a massive biological battery to fuel his immortality. And once this blessing process was completed, it's almost as if he had an emotional hold on people, or like they were addicted to him. However, as the truth of Rao's parasitic nature came to light, particularly due to Batman's digging, the conflict fractured across time. The Stones of Forever, artifacts capable of manipulating time and reality, teleported the Flash and Green Lantern Hal Jordan to ancient Krypton, where they witnessed Rao's corrupt empire at its beginning. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman was also briefly displaced in the timeline as reality began to destabilize. But before the Justice League would launch their first coordinated offensive against Rao in the present day, all of the members had successfully returned to the current time period. And now being reunited, the League was prepared to strike. Batman and Cyborg were key figures in this fight, seeing as how they devised a desperate strategy utilizing the villainous Parasite, convincing the energy-hungry villain to target the false god. This plan would put Parasite in a position to drain Rao's massive energy reserves. This stolen power was funneled into a device designed to sever the telepathic connection Rao held over his blessed victims. And while the plan nearly succeeded in breaking his hold and depleting his reserves, Rao proved too resilient. He would barely manage to repel the attack, and realizing the threat that the League posed, enacted a cataclysmic contingency plan. He escaped the battlefield and utilized the Stones of Forever to transport ancient Krypton itself through time and space, bringing the planet into Earth's orbit. This move was strategically devastating. At this point, Rao commanded an army of hundreds of thousands of Dwalu, which are fanatical Kryptonian warriors. And by bringing them into the proximity of Earth's yellow sun, he instantly granted his entire army near Superman level abilities. And due to these warriors quickly getting more and more powerful, the Justice League found themselves overwhelmed by a legion of superpowered zealots led by a desperate and ruthless so-called god. But in a twist, the war was ultimately ended not by brute force, but by the very stones that gave Rao his dominion. You see, the Justice League, working with the temporal mechanics of the Stones of Forever, managed to artificially age Earth's sun. They accelerated its life cycle until it transitioned into a red giant. And this sudden shift in solar radiation instantly depowered the Dwalu army, stripping them of their invulnerability and leveling the playing field. Now, being absent of his superpowered army and being absent of his own powers, the elder Rao was confronted by an unexpected adversary, his younger self. The Rao of the past, brought forward from a time before his corruption was absolute, looked upon the monster he would become with disgust. And in a final act of redemption, the younger Rao decided to save his legacy from total disgrace. He would brutally decapitate his older, colder self, ending the tyranny of the Great Rao once and for all. Now, for his powers and abilities and his influence on the DC universe, for my 1 to 10 rating, I'll give Rao 2 a rating of 8, which is an unforgettable rating. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you next time. Be sure to hype and subscribe to the new Sage.